10 years. That's how long I'd poured myself into Graybridge Industries. I bled for that company, sweated through weekends, sacrificed holidays, missed birthdays, and ignored warning signs in my marriage just to keep the gears of their legacy running smoothly. When I married Delia, I thought I was becoming part of a family. Turns out, I was just a convenient tool. I wasn't born into boardrooms or old money, but I knew how to build, how to scale, how to modernize. They had tradition. I brought transformation. That morning, I walked into the executive wing with a black coffee in one hand and my tablet in the other, expecting to finalize quarterly strategy adjustments for the Freeman account. Instead, I found Clinton Ward, Delia's father and the company patriarch, waiting behind his oversized mahogany desk like a judge ready to hand down a sentence. The blinds were drawn. The room smelled of leather and smugness. Clinton didn't even gesture for me to sit. The board members flanked him like silent executioners, eyes downcast, hands folded. And then, with all the warmth of a stone wall, Clinton said, "You're fired." Just like that. No explanation. No build-up. 2 words that sliced cleaner than a scalpel. I blinked, unsure I'd heard him right. "Excuse me." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking as he laced his fingers together. The Freeman account was the final straw. "You've overstepped, Marcus. You're not cut out for business." I opened my mouth, instinctively ready to defend myself. The Freeman account wasn't lost because of me. It was Clinton who refused to listen to the data I brought, refused to innovate when the client asked for flexibility. I tried to explain. "Clinton, with respect, I had a fully aligned strategy in place." He lifted a hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Don't embarrass yourself." I scanned the room, looking for a flicker of support. Delia was there, sitting in the same chair she occupied during our wedding anniversary meeting just last week. Her arms were crossed, her gaze fixed on the table, not once meeting mine. Not a word, not even a flinch. That hurt more than Clinton's dismissal. I inhaled slowly, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. Fine. So this was how they wanted it to be. Not a conversation, not even a confrontation, just a decision, premeditated and sealed with a mahogany stamp. "I'll pack my things," I said evenly. My voice didn't shake. My pride wouldn't let it. No one stopped me when I left the boardroom. No one followed me back to my office. It was like I'd already been erased, as if the past decade hadn't happened. But I remembered. Every innovation, every late-night redesign, every contract renegotiated, and every client I personally kept from jumping ship. I remembered it all. Raina, my assistant, stood outside my office like she already knew. Her eyes searched mine, lips pressed in a tight line. "They didn't even let you speak, did they?" I shook my head. "No." She helped me gather my things, some personal notebooks, the framed photo of my mother, a few awards they'd conveniently forgotten I'd won on the company's behalf. As I reached for the final binder on predictive inventory modeling, Raina hesitated, her voice low. "You built half this company." I looked at her. She wasn't being kind, she was telling the truth. I gave her a nod, one of those quiet ones that meant more than words. I didn't need pity. I needed a plan. As I walked past the receptionist with a cardboard box in my arms, something inside me hardened, not anger, not grief. Something colder, clearer. I stepped outside and the morning sun hit me like a slap. It should have felt harsh, but it didn't. It felt like clarity. 10 years ago, I walked through Graybridge's doors with ambition in my bones. Now I was walking out with something stronger, conviction. Let them think they'd won. Let Clinton sit behind his desk believing he'd eliminated a threat. He had no idea what he'd just ignited. Because I wasn't empty-handed. I had everything that mattered stored in the one place they couldn't touch, my mind. Knowledge. Strategy. Relationships. Leverage. I set the box down in the trunk of my car and stood there for a moment, letting the city breathe around me. Behind those walls, they still thought in decades. I was thinking in revolutions. I didn't just lose a job. They lost the one person who could have saved them from the fall they didn't even see coming. And I would be the one to show them exactly what that meant. I didn't go home that day. After leaving Graybridge with nothing but a cardboard box and a bruised sense of dignity, I drove for hours. Not aimlessly, intentionally. There was one person who'd once told me, always build your escape route before the fire starts. That man was Myron Ortega, my late mentor's attorney, the kind of man who didn't speak unless it mattered. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a year, but that morning as I left Graybridge, I knew exactly where I needed to go. Myron's office sat on the 22nd floor of a modest high-rise downtown. No glitz. No vanity plaques. Just a frosted glass door with his name in etched gold. When I walked in, the receptionist gave me a polite, knowing nod. She didn't even ask who I was. He met me with a firm handshake, the kind that never softened, even after years of knowing each other. "I heard," he said quietly, motioning to the leather chair across from his desk. "Clinton's finally shown his hand." "He did more than that," I replied, reaching into my briefcase. He folded the whole damn deck. I pulled out the manila folder I'd kept buried for years, each document inside dated, coded, and annotated. It was my backup plan, built late at night, in secret, piece by piece over too many months of seeing the writing on the wall. Inside was the DNA for arrival. A company not built to mimic Graybridge, but to outgrow it, outpace it, and ultimately bury it. I spread the pages across his desk. "I want you to help me build Titan X Global." Myron arched a brow, scanning the header I'd printed in bold. "You already bought the domain?" "2 years ago. Just in case." He gave a low whistle. "You always did think 5 moves ahead." I leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Clinton thinks he fired a problem. He doesn't realize he unleashed his replacement." We spent hours reviewing my vision. Real-time logistics tracking, AI-optimized delivery chains, a modular, lean infrastructure that could adapt to scale, none of the bloated legacy systems Graybridge was so stubbornly married to. Myron nodded with every slide, every note, every strategy. He didn't smile, he never did, but I could see it in his eyes. He believed. When I left his office, the skyline was painted in twilight. I didn't feel defeated anymore. I felt sharp, focused, fired up. Later that night, my phone buzzed as I poured myself a drink in my apartment. Whiskey, neat. A familiar name lit up the screen. "Raina." I answered without hesitation. "I heard what you said to Clinton," she started. Her voice was calm but electric. "And I've been thinking, if you're building something, I want in." I didn't reply right away. Raina wasn't just a capable assistant, she was brilliant. Organized to the second, emotionally intelligent, and unshakably loyal. She'd held more together at Graybridge than anyone ever realized. Her wanting in wasn't a courtesy. It was an asset. "You sure?" I asked. "This won't be safe. Or easy. Or quick." "I'm not looking for safe," she replied. "I'm looking for what comes next. And I believe in you, Marcus. I've seen what you can build." I exhaled slowly. "Then meet me Monday morning." "Not at Graybridge. We're starting fresh." She hesitated, just for a second. "Where?" 22nd and Holt. "The old Sterling warehouse. I signed a lease this afternoon." "You don't waste time," she said with a half laugh. "We don't have time to waste." When the call ended, I stared at my phone for a long moment. One call, one ally. It was a small start. But that's how fires begin, with a single spark. Over the weekend, I turned my apartment into a war room. Floor plans, team lists, legal documents, funding strategies all laid out. I didn't sleep much. I didn't want to. Every second I spent awake, planning, gave me a head start. By Sunday night, I had 5 names written on a whiteboard. 5 people Graybridge had undervalued, ignored, or pushed out, just like me. I didn't need an army. I needed believers, builders, fighters. I stared at the name I'd circled in red, Titan X Global. It didn't just sound powerful. It sounded inevitable. Let Clinton keep his boardroom, his mahogany desk, and his fading empire. I wasn't walking away. I was stepping out of his shadow. And come Monday morning, we'd begin building the future he was too arrogant to see. The Sterling warehouse had been abandoned for years. Dust clung to the cracked concrete floors like history refusing to let go, and rusted steel beams stretched across the ceiling like the ribs of a forgotten giant. But to me, it was perfect. The building had bones, real, strong ones. And more importantly, it had potential. When Raina walked through the door that Monday morning, clipboard in hand and a take-no-prisoners look on her face, she didn't even flinch at the state of it. She stepped over shattered tiles, surveyed the space, and asked, "Where's my office?" I smiled. "Anywhere you want." We rolled up our sleeves and got to work. Within a week, I had 5 desks, 3 whiteboards, a server tower humming in the corner, and enough vision to fill a dozen conference rooms. Titan X wasn't just alive, it was breathing, growing, hungering. And it started with who we brought in. I called Julius first. The man had been dismissed from Graybridge's marketing department for being too modern, as Clinton put it. What that actually meant was that Julius scared him. He was sharp, loud, unapologetically creative, and he didn't worship legacy. His campaigns used data, movement, timing, everything the old world feared. When I called, Julius didn't even ask what the offer was. "Tell me when and where," he said. and I'm already designing the logo. Next was Fatima, the only person I'd ever met who could solve a logistics problem while on a video call in one tab and designing a dynamic route model in another. Clinton once mocked her in front of a full board meeting for overcomplicating the basics. She left the room in silence that day. Now she was running our entire back-end infrastructure. I found the others in similar places, talented people Clinton either passed over or pushed out because they didn't conform to his mold. Which worked out beautifully for me, because I wasn't building anything that would fit inside a mold. We didn't have the polish Graybridge did. Our floors weren't waxed, our chairs didn't match, and our coffee machine wheezed like it was on its last breath. But we had something they didn't: belief. Not just in what we were building, but in each other. Raina had already earned her stripes 1,000 times over, but within weeks, she became more than just my right hand. She was my COO in every way. Organized, brilliant, ruthless when needed, and somehow always 10 steps ahead. She handled vendor contracts, oversaw onboarding, and negotiated software partnerships before I even had time to ask. "I know you," she said once, when I asked how she moved so fast. "You think big. I'm here to make sure you land it." Every corner of Titan X pulsed with possibility. We didn't chase clients. We became the company they didn't know they needed until we were already 10 steps ahead. We used real-time analytics, AI-driven supply chains, agile response systems that could shift entire fleets mid-delivery based on live demand data. While Graybridge clung to paper logs and aging software, we had predictive algorithms flagging disruptions before they happened. Where they saw tradition, we saw opportunity. Where they stayed flat, we evolved. I remember one morning, I walked into the office and saw Fatima had pulled a team together, people still in training, barely 2 weeks in, to solve a vendor distribution issue. They had laptops open, a digital map up on the projector, live shipment data flowing. She turned to me, explaining her fix like it was second nature. "We've rerouted the stock using alternate depots within a 40-mile radius. We'll save 20,000 this quarter if we keep this up." I didn't interrupt her. I just stood there and watched. This wasn't just a team. This was a movement. That night, Raina found me alone in the office, staring at the glowing Titan X logo. Julius had finally settled on sleek, bold, angular. It felt like armor. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than okay." She walked up beside me, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of bourbon she'd kept hidden in her desk since day one. She poured 2 fingers in each glass and handed me one. "To building from the ashes," she said. I clinked my glass to hers. "To making sure the fire was worth it." We drank in silence, not the awkward kind, just the kind that comes when you know the war hasn't even started yet, but you've already sharpened your sword. Outside, the city kept moving. But inside that warehouse, something rare was happening. We weren't just building a company, we were building the company. The one that would change the game, rewrite the rules, and outlive the shadows that tried to swallow us. Titan X wasn't a comeback story. It was a reckoning. And we were just getting started. The Freeman account had been the hill Clinton chose to die on. He blamed me for losing it, called my approach too modern, too aggressive, too reliant on tech. I knew otherwise. I'd read every email, sat in every meeting, studied every hesitation in their executive team's eyes. We didn't lose Freeman because of me. We lost them because Clinton wouldn't evolve. And now, Freeman was circling back, only not to Graybridge. They came to us. It started with a message forwarded to Raina's inbox late one Tuesday. Subject line: meeting request, Titan X capabilities. The name below made me pause. Nathan Cole, VP of Supply Operations, Freeman Corporation. I leaned over Raina's desk, rereading it twice. "How long have they been watching us?" She smirked. "Long enough to know we're not just noise." I shot back a quick reply. "Let's talk." Thursday, 10 a.m. Our office. That Thursday, we cleared the war room. Julius adjusted the lighting, Raina ran point on presentation logistics, and Fatima fine-tuned our proprietary routing demo until it ran smoother than anything Freeman had ever seen. When Nathan Cole and his COO walked in, both in tailored suits, eyes sharp and skeptical, I gave them a firm handshake and gestured to the screen behind me. "We won't waste your time," I said. "You already know what we do. Let us show you why we're better." I kept the pitch tight. 20 minutes. That was all it took. No fluff. No buzzwords. Just results. Real-time fleet optimization that shaved costs by 18%. Predictive delays caught 2 days in advance. Automated rerouting. Scalable dashboards. Live client transparency. When it ended, Nathan leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. Clinton Ward thought this was too risky? I gave a small shrug. He thought progress was too risky. They didn't even need to deliberate. The handshake that followed wasn't tentative, it was decisive. We'll start with a 6-month contract, Nathan said. Let's see what you can really do. By the time their car pulled away from the curb, the team was already erupting in cheers back inside. Raina walked over, holding the contract like it was a trophy. You just took back what they stole from you. No, I corrected, my voice low. I took back what they never deserved in the first place. The Freeman deal wasn't just a win. It was a signal. Within 60 days, 3 more clients followed, 2 quietly, 1 with headlines. Titan X was no longer the underdog. We were a storm building on the horizon, and everyone in Graybridge's orbit could feel the wind shifting. Meanwhile, Clinton's empire was beginning to crack. I heard whispers from former colleagues still stuck in the trenches. Delivery delays. Back-end crashes. In-house morale plummeting. One memo leaked from their executive server made it to my inbox anonymously. It was Clinton barking about traitorous vendors and technology scams. Translation: he didn't understand what we were doing, and it terrified him. Good. I stayed quiet publicly, never once throwing a stone. But I didn't need to. The work spoke louder than I ever could. One night, as I was reviewing quarterly growth charts in my apartment, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my heart still. Delia. I stared at the screen for a moment. My thumb hovered over the answer button, but I didn't press it. The message preview popped up a second later. Can we talk? Talk. Now. After standing silently in that boardroom, after letting her father gut my career like a carcass while she sat and watched, I turned the phone face down on the table. Some conversations don't need to be had. Some silences are louder than closure. Instead, I refocused on the numbers. Titan X was up 200% in client onboarding. Our pilot program was outperforming industry benchmarks. Vendor interest was climbing. Recruiting was picking up momentum. Every move we made echoed through the halls Clinton once controlled. And still, no press release. No gloating. Just progress. That weekend, Raina and I met with Julius at a rooftop bar downtown. It was something of a tradition now, a monthly review under city lights. You realize what the Freeman deal means, right? Julius asked, clinking his glass against mine. I nodded. It means we're not chasing anymore. They're coming to us. Raina leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. It also means Clinton's scared. Freeman was his bedrock, and you just pulled it out from under him. I'm not here to destroy him, I said carefully. I'm here to replace him. Julius laughed. That's way worse. I smiled, but deep down, I knew the real truth. Clinton had fired me thinking he was protecting his legacy. But all he did was light the match that would set it ablaze. And I wasn't done. Not even close. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since Clinton Ward fired me from Graybridge Industries, with those 2 words still echoing in my memory like a cold slap. You're fired. In the 12 months since, I had rebuilt more than just my career. I'd reconstructed my entire purpose. Brick by digital brick, Titan X Global had become what Graybridge could never be. And now, fate had a peculiar sense of irony. It brought us both to the same building, the same industry event, with roles so reversed, it almost felt fictional. The Trade Tech Logistics Conference was the industry's crown jewel. A gathering of giants and hungry upstarts, innovation panels, funding summits, and a revolving door of boardroom elites trying to predict the next shift in global commerce. This year, Titan X wasn't just attending, we were a headlining sponsor. Our name was on the banners. Our software powered the digital check-in kiosks. Our booth had a waiting line. Graybridge? Graybridge was buried halfway down the printed agenda, tucked into a forgotten side panel scheduled across from lunch. The morning of the keynote, I stood backstage behind the curtain, adjusting my cufflinks while Raina checked the run sheet. She wore a sleek navy pantsuit that mirrored her focus, crisp, sharp, unbothered. Julius hovered nearby, running through the final slide transitions. The Titan X logo glowed behind him on a massive LED wall, all silver edges and electric confidence. The MC walked up beside me, headset mic already lit green. You ready? He asked. More than. I stepped out into the lights, and for a moment, I let the silence of recognition settle in the room. Applause followed, not polite, not tentative. It was the sound of the industry acknowledging a name they could no longer ignore. Titan X wasn't the startup scrambling for relevance anymore. We were relevance. In the third row, I saw them, Clinton and Delia. Their seats weren't special. They barely managed to secure VIP access this year. Their name listed under Graybridge Partners instead of Platinum sponsors. Clinton's posture was rigid, his hands clenched in his lap. Delia sat beside him, more composed, but her eyes gave her away. She was trying not to look at me, and failing. I began. No introduction. No reminiscence. Just the pitch, only now. It wasn't a pitch. It was a proclamation. I walked them through our AI-driven delivery chain optimization, our adaptive infrastructure modeling, our live feedback inventory systems that had cut failure rates by over 30% for our top-tier clients. I showed them a map of real-time shipments being tracked through our interface. I showed them the future. And I reminded them, without saying a word, that this was the exact strategy Clinton had once called fantasy tech for impatient minds. The crowd was with me. I could feel the energy shifting with each word. Executives nodded. CTOs took notes. Cameras clicked. And Clinton? Clinton sat frozen in a sea of applause, his legacy unraveling in real time. When I finished, I stepped off the stage to a standing ovation. Backstage, Raina exhaled with a slow, triumphant smile. He didn't blink once during your whole talk. He never blinks when he's cornered, I said, grabbing a water bottle from the refreshment table. He just waits for someone else to bail him out. Delia found me later in the hallway near the vendor suites. She approached quietly, not her usual confident stride, just a shadow of it. That presentation, she said softly, was impressive. Thanks. She hesitated. Clinton didn't know you'd be here. If he had, he wouldn't have come. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't wearing her usual armor. No pristine pearls, no perfectly styled hair. Just a blazer, simple makeup, and a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. And what about you? I asked. She paused, glancing toward the hallway where Clinton was likely licking his wounds. I wanted to see it for myself, she said. See what you'd become. That stung in a way I didn't expect. Not because I still needed her approval, but because part of me remembered how much it had meant when I used to have it. I didn't become anything, I said. This was always me. You just stopped looking. She opened her mouth, closed it again. For a second, it looked like she might say something real. But instead, she nodded once, turned, and walked away. Back at the Titan X booth, Julius had already made printouts of the morning's coverage. The conference blog had named us the company to watch. Industry insiders were reposting clips of my talk on LinkedIn and calling it the defining moment of the conference. Clinton Ward had built a kingdom on legacy. I had built a revolution on being cast out of it. And for the first time, the world finally saw which one was still standing. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since Clinton Ward fired me from Graybridge Industries with those 2 words still echoing in my memory like a cold slap. You're fired. In the 12 months since, I had rebuilt more than just my career. I'd reconstructed my entire purpose. Brick by digital brick, Titan X Global had become what Graybridge could never be. And now, fate had a peculiar sense of irony. It brought us both to the same building, the same industry event, with roles so reversed, it almost felt fictional. The Trade Tech Logistics Conference was the industry's crown jewel, a gathering of giants and hungry upstarts, innovation panels, funding summits, and a revolving door of boardroom elites trying to predict the next shift in global commerce. This year, Titan X wasn't just attending. We were a headlining sponsor. Our name was on the banners. Our software powered the digital check-in kiosks. Our booth had a waiting line. Graybridge. Graybridge was buried halfway down the printed agenda, tucked into a forgotten side panel scheduled across from lunch. The morning of the keynote, I stood backstage behind the curtain, adjusting my cufflinks while Raina checked the run sheet. She wore a sleek navy pantsuit that mirrored her focus, crisp, sharp, unbothered. Julius hovered nearby, running through the final slide transitions. The Titan X logo glowed behind him on a massive LED wall, all silver edges and electric confidence. The MC walked up beside me, headset mic already lit green. You ready? He asked. More than. I stepped out into the lights, and for a moment, I let the silence of recognition settle in the room. Applause followed, not polite, not tentative. It was the sound of the industry acknowledging a name they could no longer ignore. Titan X wasn't the startup scrambling for relevance anymore. We were relevance. In the third row, I saw them, Clinton and Delia. Their seats weren't special. They'd barely managed to secure VIP access this year. Their name listed under Graybridge Partners instead of Platinum sponsors. Clinton's posture was rigid, his hands clenched in his lap. Delia sat beside him, more composed, but her eyes gave her away. She was trying not to look at me, and failing. I began. No introduction. No reminiscence. Just the pitch, only now. It wasn't a pitch. It was a proclamation. I walked them through our AI-driven delivery chain optimization, our adaptive infrastructure modeling, our live feedback inventory systems that had cut failure rates by over 30% for our top-tier clients. I showed them a map of real-time shipments being tracked through our interface. I showed them the future. And I reminded them, without saying a word, that this was the exact strategy Clinton had once called fantasy tech for impatient minds. The crowd was with me. I could feel the energy shifting with each word. Executives nodded. CTOs took notes. Cameras clicked. And Clinton? Clinton sat frozen in a sea of applause, his legacy unraveling in real time. When I finished, I stepped off the stage to a standing ovation. Backstage, Raina exhaled with a slow, triumphant smile. He didn't blink once during your whole talk. He never blinks when he's cornered, I said, grabbing a water bottle from the refreshment table. He just waits for someone else to bail him out. Delia found me later in the hallway near the vendor suites. She approached quietly, not her usual confident stride, just a shadow of it. That presentation, she said softly, was impressive. Thanks. She hesitated. Clinton didn't know you'd be here. If he had, he wouldn't have come. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't wearing her usual armor. No pristine pearls, no perfectly styled hair. Just a blazer, simple makeup, and a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. And what about you? I asked. She paused, glancing toward the hallway where Clinton was likely licking his wounds. I wanted to see it for myself, she said. See what you'd become. That stung in a way I didn't expect. Not because I still needed her approval, but because part of me remembered how much it had meant when I used to have it. I didn't become anything, I said. This was always me. You just stopped looking. She opened her mouth, closed it again. For a second, it looked like she might say something real. But instead, she nodded once, turned, and walked away. Back at the Titan X booth, Julius had already made printouts of the morning's coverage. The conference blog had named us the company to watch. Industry insiders were reposting clips of my talk on LinkedIn and calling it the defining moment of the conference. Clinton Ward had built a kingdom on legacy. I had built a revolution on being cast out of it. And for the first time, the world finally saw which one was still standing. Collapse doesn't always sound like an explosion. Sometimes, it's the quiet crumble of something brittle pretending it's still strong. Graybridge didn't fall in one day. It fractured, slowly, messily, and publicly. It started with murmurs. Whispers of missed shipments, delayed deliveries, key clients shifting vendors. A logistics journal ran a piece titled "The Dinosaur in the Room. Is Graybridge losing its edge?" I didn't need to read it. I already knew the answer. The market was catching up to what I'd known all along. Clinton's kingdom had no future. Raina stormed into my office one morning, tablet in hand, her usually calm expression replaced with something more urgent. "You need to see this," she said, placing it on my desk. On screen was the headline that had just hit the wires. Graybridge Industries nears collapse amid leadership crisis. Below it, a photo of Clinton, gray suit wrinkled, shoulders slumped, eyes wild, exiting the building with his assistant shielding him from the cameras. I stared at the image for a long time. Not because I needed to process it. I just didn't expect it to feel like this. Not joy, not satisfaction, just justice. Raina sat down across from me, her voice softer now. "They're filing for Chapter 11. Delia's name wasn't in the article, but apparently she's filed for separation." I nodded slowly. The unraveling's complete. Julius poked his head in seconds later. "The press wants a quote." I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, about how I feel?" "Exactly that." I shook my head. "We don't dance on graves. Let them bury themselves." We didn't issue a statement. We didn't celebrate. We just kept working. And maybe that's what made it worse for Clinton, knowing we weren't even pausing to notice the fire. We were already building the next floor of our tower. That week, our expansion team finalized the blueprint for our Southeast Asia logistics hub. Raina secured a multi-year contract with Global Port Systems, one of Graybridge's oldest alliances. Fatima streamlined our predictive inventory software so precisely that one of our vendors called it magic in code. We were soaring while they were sinking. The contrast was painful to watch, if I had any intention of watching. But life has a way of forcing reflection, whether you invite it or not. One night, I stayed late in the office, staring out the window at the city pulsing with light. The silence was welcome. The kind of silence that doesn't demand an answer, just acknowledgement. I poured myself a drink and scrolled through the Graybridge financial filings. They were bleeding money. The board was fracturing. Employees were fleeing in waves. Even longtime partners were severing ties. They weren't just losing, they were rotting from within. And yet, I felt no urge to gloat. Because I remembered the man I used to be. The one who gave 10 years of his life to that company. The one who showed up early, stayed late, and believed his loyalty would be enough. I remembered every meeting I walked into trying to prove I belonged. Every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. Every late night, I convinced myself I was building something that would, eventually, appreciate me. But it never had, and it never would have. A soft knock on the glass broke my thoughts. Raina stood in the doorway. "You good?" she asked. I nodded, just watching the world shift. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "It's okay to feel something. You didn't just beat them, Marcus. You outlived them." I took a sip of my drink. They never saw it coming. They never looked close enough to see. We sat there for a while, not speaking, just existing. There's a strange peace that comes when you realize you don't need vengeance. You don't need revenge. You just need truth. And the truth was, I'd become everything they told me I couldn't be. That night, I walked the corridors of our office after everyone had gone. I passed the breakout space where our team had laughed over lunch hours. I passed the war room where our first pitch to Freeman played out. I passed the glass meeting room where Julius had once sketched our first brand concept on a whiteboard with a dyeing marker. And I realized, we'd built more than a company. We'd built culture. We'd built purpose. We'd built something no amount of legacy could imitate. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught my reflection in the metal doors. Same face. Same eyes. But the man staring back at me wasn't the man Clinton fired. That man was gone. This one? This one was just getting started. The folder sat between us like a loaded weapon. Clinton hadn't opened it yet, just stared at the bold black lettering stamped across the cover. Merger proposal, Titanex and Graybridge. His fingers hovered above the edge, twitching slightly, as if unsure whether to pick it up or push it away. He finally looked at me. "You'd really save the company? After what I did to you?" I studied his face. The arrogance had drained out of him, replaced with the weariness of a man who'd been fighting a losing war against time, ego, and the world he never thought would pass him by. I thought I'd feel satisfaction watching him squirm. Instead, I felt something else, clarity. "I'm not here to save you, Clinton," I said. "But Graybridge still has assets worth preserving, real estate, freight routes, vendor contracts that took decades to secure. Underneath your mismanagement, there's still value. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering evolution." He opened the folder, flipping through the pages like they might bite him. Charts, figures, legal clauses, transition plans. The proposal wasn't just an outline, it was a roadmap. Titanex would absorb Graybridge's operational infrastructure. In return, we'd gain key assets at a discount and eliminate a potential competitor before it rose from the ashes. "I see here you've proposed a retirement clause," Clinton murmured, tapping the line with his finger. "Chairman Emeritus." "That's non-negotiable," I replied. "You retain your title, your dignity, and you bow out gracefully. No voting power. No decisions. Just a name on the masthead for historical continuity." "And you?" he asked, though he already knew. "I become CEO of the merged entity. We rebrand. Titan Ward Logistics. A new company. New leadership. Half legacy, half future." He looked at me like he was trying to see the boy he once dismissed, the son-in-law who worked late to prove himself, the strategist he belittled behind closed doors. But I wasn't that man anymore. And now, I wasn't asking for approval. I was handing out terms. "Why not just let Graybridge die?" he asked softly. "Why not wait until the vultures finish their work?" I paused, letting the question settle before answering. "Because there's still something worth saving. There are people at Graybridge who believed in what it could become, a people like I once was. And because when you build something from the ground up, you don't destroy what can be transformed. You outgrow it. You surpass it. And then, if you're smart, you reshape it in your image." He sighed, leaning back in the chair. "You sound like a man who's already won." I smiled faintly. "That's because I have." Clinton didn't argue. He just stared down at the paperwork again, as if hoping the right answer might rise from the pages. Eventually, he nodded. "I'll review everything with my legal team." "Do that," I said. "But don't stall. You and I both know you don't have time to shop around. Every day you wait, more clients walk. More vendors pull out. The headlines get worse. He looked up again. And Delia? The name landed harder than I expected. For a brief second, my jaw tensed. She made her choices, I said. She stood by you when it cost me everything. Now she can watch what happens when you underestimate someone too long. I didn't come here to make excuses for her, he said. Only for myself. I nodded once, accepting that as the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from the man. And strangely, it was enough. I want the board to hear this directly from you, I added. A formal proposal, jointly presented. You endorse the merger in full. You vouch for my leadership. His eyebrows raised. You're asking me to walk into that room and announce that my replacement is the man I fired. No, I corrected. I'm asking you to walk in and show them that you finally got something right. There was a long pause. Then Clinton closed the folder, tapped it lightly against his knee, and stood. You're relentless, Marcus. I had to be, I said. You taught me that. He extended a hand. I took it, not as a gesture of peace, but of business. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a transaction. And it was the first time in a very long time that we were finally speaking the same language. As he left the office, Raina stepped inside. She'd been standing just out of sight, listening, watching, waiting. Well? She asked. He's going to present the offer to his board. She gave me a smirk. You sure about this? Merging? Sharing even a shred of what you've built with the man who tried to destroy you? I'm not sharing, I said. I'm absorbing. He just doesn't realize it yet. Raina's smirk widened. That's more like it. I picked up the second copy of the merger proposal from my desk and slid it into my briefcase. The war is over, I said. Now we rewrite the map. The boardroom felt colder than I remembered. It wasn't the temperature, it was the energy. Gone were the confident handshakes, the idle laughter, the smell of fresh brewed coffee that used to waft in just before meetings started. Now it smelled of desperation and dust, like something that had gone stale but hadn't yet been thrown away. I stood near the head of the long oak table, dressed in a charcoal suit, calm, collected. Clinton sat beside me, older, quieter, stripped of his usual grandeur. He clutched a copy of the merger proposal like a man holding his last hope in both hands. Across from us sat what remained of the Graybridge board. 7 members, though only 6 had voting rights after last quarter's resignation debacle. I knew most of them by name, history, and ambition. I'd studied them back when I was trying to impress them. Now I studied them because I needed their votes. Delia was there, too. She sat at the far end, arms folded, her expression unreadable. Her presence wasn't required, her vote didn't count, but she came anyway. I didn't know if it was loyalty to her father or curiosity about the man she once called her husband. Maybe both. Clinton cleared his throat. I won't waste your time, he began, voice rough. We all know where Graybridge stands. This company is no longer on the brink. It's in the free fall. We've lost contracts, staff, equity, and faith. And there is only one viable path forward. He motioned toward me. I stepped into the spotlight. Titan X was built from the bones of what Graybridge refused to become. I began. We took the same industry, the same clients, the same pain points, and built a solution the market needed before it knew it did. This merger isn't about saving a dying brand. It's about evolving it. Together, Titan Ward Logistics won't be a patchwork fix. It will be a new entity. Agile, modern, global, and driven by performance. I handed out the binders. Raina had prepared each one with brutal precision. Projections, cost savings, infrastructure reuse plans, staffing transitions, new client potential. It was all there. One board member, a man named Halverson, flipped through the binder with a permanent scowl. And Clinton's role? He retires as chairman emeritus, I said evenly. Ceremonial. No decision-making power. And your role? Another asked. I step in as CEO and president. Effective immediately after the vote passes. Halverson huffed. You've done well with Titan X, but this is still a legacy company. There are reputations involved. I leaned in slightly. Your reputation is already compromised. What matters now is whether you want to go down with a failing brand or be remembered as the board that turned it around. The room fell quiet. No one spoke for a long minute. Then Clinton looked at Halverson and the others, voice stronger now. Marcus is right. I held this company back. My pride did more damage than any competitor could have. But he's offering us a way out. A dignified transition. You can vote no, and we'll be scavenged within a quarter. Or you can vote yes and help shape what comes next. It was surreal, hearing him say it, hearing him back me, the man he once fired. Halverson exchanged glances with the others. Then, finally, he said, let's take it to a vote. One by one, hands went up. Yes, 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 no. I didn't flinch at the dissent. That single no was expected. Jonathan Pierce, an old-school loyalist who believed the company should fold with its founder's pride intact. He looked directly at me as he lowered his hand, defiant. I met his gaze, impassive. I wasn't here to please everyone, just to win. The final vote stood, 6-1 in favor. Clinton gave a quiet nod. Motion passes. It was done. A line had been drawn, a chapter closed, a legacy merged into something new. As the board began to gather their things and sign off on procedural documents, I looked across the table at Delia. She hadn't moved. Her expression had softened now, but her eyes held something else, something older. Regret. When our eyes met, she gave me a slight nod. Not approval. Not apology. Just acknowledgement. I returned it politely. Nothing more. There was no need for words. We had passed that point long ago. That evening, the press release went live. Titan Ward, a new force in global logistics. The photo accompanying it showed the new logo gleaming above the entrance to our joint headquarters. Beneath it, the byline read, led by Marcus Ward, a visionary once dismissed by the very company he now transforms. Raina came into my office just after it published, her phone already lighting up with media requests. You want me to schedule interviews? Not yet, I said. Let the story breathe. She smirked. Let them choke on it first, huh? I gave her a small smile. Exactly. The vote had passed. But the real work, the future, had just begun. The plaque on the wall said it all. Founded by those who believed innovation was worth the risk. Simple. Clean. Permanent. I ran my fingers over the brushed steel lettering as I passed it in the lobby of the newly remodeled headquarters. The old Graybridge building had been gutted, restructured, and rebranded. Gone were the wood-paneled walls and outdated cubicles. In their place, glass-walled offices, open collaboration zones, AI-integrated logistics dashboards, and teams moving like gears in a newly oiled machine. Titan Ward wasn't a company anymore. It was a movement. One built from truth, resilience, and just enough fire to forge something indestructible. Raina passed me near the central staircase, a tablet tucked under her arm. She looked up, already mid-sentence. Freeman wants to schedule a renewal call before the quarter ends. They're planning to double inventory for Q3. And Global Port is requesting a tech pilot. They want to test our predictive pipeline model for international shipments. Schedule both, I said, falling into step beside her. And make sure Fatima gets looped in on Global Port. They'll want back-end specs. Raina nodded, already typing as we walked. I'll have it ready before lunch. That was the rhythm now, fast, focused, forward. Everything Graybridge had once resisted, we now embraced. Meetings were efficient, feedback was actionable, and every floor of our headquarters buzzed with progress. People no longer whispered in fear of change, they ran toward it. And the part that humbled me most? They weren't running toward me. They were running toward us. Julius passed us with a mock salute, a cardboard coffee tray in one hand. Just printed the first quarterly magazine. Feature story, How Titan Ward is Redefining Global Supply Chains. Catchy, right? Very, I said, if a little modest. He grinned and kept walking. Raina peeled off toward the conference room, and I kept moving, taking the long way around the building. I liked these walks. They grounded me, reminded me what had come before, the ashes beneath the marble. I passed the training center where new hires ran simulations on real-time shipping anomalies. I passed the innovation lab where engineers fine-tuned route optimizers for seasonal spikes. Every room pulsed with the same undercurrent. We're not here to fit in. We're here to change everything. I reached my office and stepped out onto the terrace. The city stretched below, a quiet hum of life and light. The sun had just begun its descent, washing the skyline in gold. I rested my hands on the railing, breathing it all in. It had been a little over a year since I'd left this world as a discarded piece of someone else's empire. Fired, silenced, underestimated. And now, I stood at the helm of an industry-defining company. Not through revenge, but through reinvention. I hadn't crushed Graybridge. I'd absorbed it, refined it, made it something better than it ever had the courage to become. And I did it without shouting, without grandstanding, without tearing anyone down. That's the thing they never understood. Revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes, it comes dressed in quiet excellence. It comes when you outgrow the need to be validated and focus instead on being valuable. The door behind me opened. Raina stepped out, 2 glasses in hand, and that familiar knowing smile on her face. "You need to stop doing the dramatic skyline staring," she said, handing me a glass of whiskey. "People are starting to think you're brooding on purpose. Let them think what they want," I said, taking a sip. "I'm just appreciating." She leaned against the railing beside me, glass dangling in her hand. "We did it." I nodded. "We did." She glanced over at me. "So what's next?" I looked out at the city again, at the cranes building higher, the traffic flowing faster, the lights blinking in every direction. "Legacy," I said. "Real legacy. The kind built on impact, not ego." She raised her glass. "To rewriting what they thought was permanent." I tapped mine against hers. "To building what they said was impossible." We stood there a while, quiet again, the kind of silence that only comes when everything you fought for has taken root and bloomed. Later that evening, as the office emptied and the city dimmed, I took one last walk through the halls. No crowd, no applause, just me and the echo of everything we'd built. I paused by the original Titan X logo, now framed and mounted on a sidewall. I touched it gently, the beginning of it all. Then I turned, stepped back into the elevator, and pressed the button for the ground floor. Because the thing about legacy is, it doesn't live in plaques, logos, or corner offices. It lives in movement. And I was already on my way to the next one.